it's right. Can't you see that you are doing wrong? Tell me, darling, is it love or is it spite? Though tomorrow wedding bells will ring, and I'll see you standing at his side, in my heart I'll still be wondering, is it love or spite that's making you his bride? Is it love or spite that drives you to his arms? Can you make your heart believe it's right? Can't you see that you are doing wrong? Tell me, darling, is it love or is it spite?
So from Hong Kong, in Hong Kong for the last generation,
I'm
you have a choice.
BakerMarshall.com, the Republican
I
candidate
did
for
not
governor.
have sexual relations
And I
with that woman.
realized that this is something
Miss
he is
Lewinsky.
We're not going to
inherent.
be able to solve our problems if we get distracted by sideshows and carnival barkers.
One Republican, one Democrat, and you discuss the issues that matter in today's local, state, national, and global politics. Hosted by Steve Hickson with co-hosts John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. This is Backfire.
Welcome, Clevelanders. Welcome to Backfire this morning with Steve Hickson, myself, and John Stanberry, and Franklin Chansey is the co-host here today. Welcome back, guys.
Good morning.
We've had an exciting week. There's a lot of stuff's going on, but to get started with, I'm going to let Mr. Franklin Chansey give us an announcement that has not made the press yet. We have some breaking news right here on Whoop Radio.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Franklin.
We get to put our journalist hat on this morning instead of just talking about the news.
That's right.
The Tennessee Court of Appeals issued their decision yesterday in the legal dispute between the city and county over the division of sales tax revenue. I guess we could call it a split decision. The Court of Appeals held that the city was initially correct on the issue of when the parties had to start dividing the new sales tax money. So there's a one-year period from the fiscal year of 2009 to 2010 where the city gets to keep all the revenue from sales tax proceeds in the city without the division. And then the other issues that were raised, whether the old division of funds agreement between the parties would stand or not. The Court of Appeals held that it did under the old legal theory of res judicata, which basically means it was decided the last time you were in court, whether it was good, bad, right, or wrong. We're not going to undo it and look at it again.
So in short, the city won part of this and the county won part of it. Now, then it's kind of in reverse of what they wanted, though, isn't it?
Well, it's in both parties' case. That's true. Now that decision is out, then there's a period of time for the either the city or the county to ask the Tennessee Supreme Court to review the decision and decide if that's correct or not. Whether they do that or not, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I think the important point to remember here is we talk about winning and losing. The taxpayer paid both sides of this lawsuit. So
That's right.
Ultimately, the taxpayer lost no matter what happened. And I'd be interested to know how much did the county spend and how much did the city spend to take this to court?
Yeah. Maybe, I don't know what Mike Smith is holding in escrow up there, but that's what basically the city won, was those funds that he had been holding back from the difference in the election.
Well, the city voted first, and then the county voted, and
Right.
there were taxes collected inside the city after the city passed it before the county did. And
Right.
so the city says that they were owed those taxes wholly. The county said, no, we're going to divide it. The court apparently said, no, you will divide it.
Yeah, there's a state statute involved which basically says that if a city passes a referendum of this type, then the county body has a period of time in which to adopt that referendum, and that just throws out the city referendum and becomes countywide. Well, in this particular case, the county commission initially voted to not do this referendum, and then later on decided, well, wait a minute, maybe that wasn't such a good idea, and went back and did it. But because of the delay in time, the statute wasn't triggered, so that the division was required until after it went into effect in the next fiscal year. And so that was the issue.
The county waited until the city put it on the ballot and it voted and passed.
Yeah.
And then the county decided, well, if the city got it passed, we could probably get it passed.
Well, no, it wasn't
And
that
way
way.
it worked. That's kind of the way I remember it.
Well, that wasn't the motivation. What happened was the county commission did not want it to pass, did not want to raise taxes on the citizens during probably a very, very bad economy. And they actually didn't think it would pass. And if you go back and you look at that city turnout in that election and the number of people that actually voted to put this tax on us, it's shamefully low. It's in the hundreds that passed that. But once it did pass, now you had all these county citizens who do the bulk of their purchasing in the city that were going to be paying this tax and yet not getting any benefit out of it. So after it did unfortunately pass in the city, the county commission felt like they had an obligation to the taxpayer to at least try to make sure that some of that money was actually spent on the same citizens who were paying the tax. And so they did come back.
Anyway, breaking news right here at Whoop Radio. Hopefully Mike Smith may call in a little bit.
Maybe he'll call in and tell us how much money we're talking about.
Yeah.
But he does have the money set aside to pay this, so Mike was prepared.
Well, he has not known who to pay it to, so they've held on to it.
At least he's been getting a little bit of interest on it, maybe.
Maybe a little bit, hopefully.
Well, in Mike's case, he gets a good bit of interest on it.
Anyway, Mike, we're going to, if you've got my cell phone, just go ahead and give me a call. And we'll be opening the phone lines up here in the second half hour of the show. All right, that's exciting news that possibly this lawsuit's finally coming to an end here in Bradley County and Cleveland. And
we'll know in about 60 days.
all right.
That's when the decision has to be made whether either party will seek to appeal further.
I don't know. I don't know if they really would appeal this or not. I mean, this thing's been going on so long, it's about time to flip a coin and say, all right, who wins or something here.
It's about time to say, hey, the taxpayer lost.
Right.
Let's move on.
Let's move on.
And don't cost them any more money.
Yeah. You know, we've had a terrible, terrible storm that's came through, and it's going to be affecting a lot of lives, and got a lot of turmoil going on right now. I'm sitting here looking at pictures of the New York Times and some of the headlines there, and you know, pretty much devastating. New Jersey, what's happened in New Jersey, you know.
Well, Chris Christie's not normally at a loss for words, and when he got up yesterday morning, he said he could never have imagined the kind of damage and devastation that he saw.
Yeah. There's sand in the streets 8 inches deep in New Jersey, and you know, they had a lot of fires. I don't really understand what caused the fires. I guess it's electrical.
In New York City, almost all of the utilities are underground. They don't have, you know, poles like we do.
Yeah.
And so if water manages to get into those, the possibility of, you know, a fire is really, really high. And in this particular case, that's a neighborhood that's, you know, well over homes that are mostly over 100 years old, so older construction standards. And so it's just a prescription for a
well,
big
sadly,
disaster.
a lot of the people that lived in that neighborhood apparently were first responders to 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the people that saved lots of people's lives have now lost their homes and everything.
Well, it's I was just looking at the New York Times this morning. They're talking about, you know, they've been told that this could happen for years and years, and they've done really nothing about it. You know, they're just 2 feet above sea level there where they are, I think. And
well, it's tragedies frequently are the seed of big discussions. You know, whether it's New Orleans or Miami or that, all of the folks who live on the coast face this possibility on a regular basis, but the remedies to avoid those sorts of things are very, very expensive.
Well,
and I mean, and that's a fair thing for us to talk about, and the cost and all that. But infrastructure is probably as big an expenditure as governments can make. We always like to say, well, they need to do it. Well, okay.
But Franklin, there is a cheaper solution. In years past, we didn't have the kind of population numbers who lived right on the coast at 2 feet above sea level. And in New Orleans' case, actually below sea level. So, the problem is sometimes there are consequences of your decisions that come down the road, and if you don't think these things out as well, you end up suffering tremendous losses like this. The Ninth Ward in New Orleans is actually 50 feet under the dike that's holding, Lord, I don't know, hundreds of millions of gallons in Lake Pontchartrain. Now, who in their right mind didn't think living 50 feet under a body of water like that wasn't eventually going to be a problem?
Well, there's going to definitely be a lot of infrastructure that's going to be rebuilt in New York and New Jersey.
Sure.
There's going to that's going to create a lot of jobs, I'm sure.
I did see a story about that unfortunately, or I guess if there's a silver lining for anybody, areas that go through these types of situations do in fact tend to experience sort of an economic boom afterwards from that. But
Chicago was rebuilt after the Great Fire. London's been rebuilt in the same fashion.
Look at the school systems in New Orleans. What's happened there? Mm-hmm. They've actually improved on school systems, going to these charter schools. They discovered it the hard way. Mm-hmm. Maybe some of this may change New York areas and some of that. I don't know. It's a terrible thing, and I guess will the storm affect the election? That's my next question this morning.
It's a little unclear right now. There are mechanisms for how you move an election if that should have to happen.
But
hopefully it won't be necessary.
But those are state by state. Each state's different. Some states have allowances for that, some don't.
If you're going to ask me, is it going to affect the outcome of the election?
Well,
I would say likely not, and I'll tell you why. It's because most of the states that have been inflicted with the worst damage were not states that were particularly close in election polls, no matter which
except
for
Pennsylvania. And this is going to affect Philadelphia. Philadelphia is actually the most populated Democrat area in the state, and it does have a possibility to affect the election.
Well, I really feel like most people have made up their mind who they're going to vote for right now.
Well, the problem is whether they get out to vote or not. And like Franklin said, just on a purely logistical standpoint, a lot of the polling places have been destroyed. Mm-hmm. They've got to find where they're going to hold the election.
Yeah, voting machines. There's going to be a lot of issues come up. I was looking at a quick article here before we came on the air, and it was talking about, Congress has to make a change in the presidential election, I think. They're adjourned right now, so to be able to...
We've had this before, and they've not wanted to enter into that.
I mean, the election day is actually established by an act of Congress.
Right.
So
they would have to come to session, agree on something, pass it. And since they can't pass a budget for the last 3 years, I'm sure this would be minor.
Well, I mean, then what happens? Does the election go on that day?
Each state, that's when some of the states allow a 15-day window to reschedule. Some have a 30-day window. There are different allowances in all these state constitutions and state law, and that's really who's responsible for holding the election.
So we could have the election. Two states could postpone the election.
30 days. Some of them are up to, I believe, 30 days.
So basically, we wouldn't get the results of the election for...
You could, theoretically.
Theoretically, yeah.
I was sitting here looking and said,
New
York was holding a mayor's race when the terror struck September 11th, 2001. The city rescheduled the election after Hurricane Katrina. In 2005, Louisiana's governor postponed municipal elections in New Orleans after election officials said polling places wouldn't be ready.
But a presidential election is different, and in the article that I read on that talked about all these states and their allowances, but it didn't really explain how those allowances mesh with the idea that you have federal law saying it will be on this day. So I'm not sure anybody is entirely sure how this works out. But, if you're going to go down that road, there's a transport plane in Florida that crashed and burned apparently a significant number of absentee ballots to our troops. Well, are we going to make sure that those people have extra time to vote?
I'm going to go out on a limb and predict that there's not going to be a delay in the election.
I think Franklin's right.
I think it's unlikely, just because I think that what they will do is, your point's well taken about some neighborhood polling places being affected. I think they'll move them to different places.
Well, I think Governor McDonald in Virginia has already told them to open their hours. I think they're going to have very, very extended hours to make up the lost these 2 days they've already lost. He's going to make those up. I think they'll be handled.
I did see that several of the places were going to have extended hours this weekend when they otherwise would have, I think, stopped early voting on Friday probably for most of them.
Well, should we go ahead and vote now on whether we hold the election and there won't be any hoo-la-la-la-la should Romney win? In other words, if Romney wins, let's not have an appeal because the election wasn't held.
Well, you've got a president on the end of the fourth.
It could go both ways. But
the end of his 4th year in office is still blaming his predecessor. So I am sure that they will hold this up as something to blame when they lose.
I'm glad to see that you're already planning for the post-election celebration. You keep that up.
No, I'm just saying that if Obama loses, I'm sure they'll throw this out that their people weren't able to get out and vote.
That's what I'm talking about. If this happens, I mean, if this election goes on, I think the president needs to be set now on the outcome is the outcome.
Well, my prediction is that the president wins, so I don't think that we're going to have an issue about that.
Do you think the storm helps or hurt Obama and Romney?
Well, on a purely numbers standpoint, I would say that it helps Romney. And the reason for that is that more affluent voters, if you will, are better able to deal with the fact that
Franklin, that's not a fair statement.
Let him finish. Affluent voters are allowed to what?
Or more able to deal with, for example, if the polling place in my neighborhood's not available and you got to go across town to get there, it's an easier thing for them to do. That's all I'm saying. So if early voting opportunities were lost during this time, it's harder for folks who work factory work or shift work to get there. So I would say that would affect turnout in it. Those are things that help. Now, let me go on and say, though, but this is what I was saying to start with. Most of these states are ones that, at least in terms of the polling, aren't that close. So do I think it's going to affect the outcome? Not necessarily. I tell you what I think it really could affect, though. It could affect the question of who wins the popular vote, because those are definitely areas of the country where the Obama campaign would expect to pick up bigger margins in most of those states. And that could definitely affect whether somebody gets above 50% of the vote.
Well, but now that's all assuming the coastal regions. Ohio is being hit very hard from this storm as well in the snowstorm. And right now, Chicago, Lake Michigan is up. And there's some
Virginia.
There's some polling coming out of Illinois that indicates that Obama may not necessarily have a lock on Illinois, because his turnout in the city areas where he's stronger is nowhere near what it was in 2008. And Romney is much stronger than McCain was in the surrounding neighborhoods.
Well, but Obama won by 20-something points in 2008. So whether it's close or not, that's not the same thing as getting past that kind of margin. We're still back to 3 or 4 states.
I don't think you can compare Obama's statistical information in 2008 to now.
Well, and I'm not trying.
I think he's made that many people mad.
Well, that does not seem to be reflected in what the polls show.
Well, the guy that's picked every election, he's an odds maker out of Vegas. He says that if you think about it, Mr. Obama had everybody he could possibly vote for him in the last election.
Mm-hmm.
Now then, some of the things that he's done. Now this guy, he says, I use the common sense approach. I don't use the information that I gained from these polls. He says, you take everybody that voted for Mr. Obama in the first election. He said the Jewish vote, for instance. He said the situation that's happened in Israel. He said he's going to lose 10-15% of the vote there. The blacks with the gay marriage issues, he's going to lose 10-12% there. He thinks. He goes on down the line. He even talks about the youth that got behind him and supported him during the last election. They're out of school now. They're unemployed now. They're not there. There's going to be a 10%, 15% drop there. So he said throw everything out the window. He said statistically the stuff from 2008 to now is not there.
Well,
it's a new deal.
And I'm not suggesting that, but if you want to look at a different way of doing it, if you want to talk about the Vegas approach, you know, there's actually a stock market on the election. It's called in trade. People actually buy and sell shares on this and actually try to make a profit on it. Okay, 61% as of this morning, because I look at it because it's actually been very accurate over the years. 61% of the money is predicting Obama victory. The odds makers in Europe, you know, they actually take bets on this sort of thing. Almost 2/3 of the money is going Obama on that.
That's because all the European socialists want him to be reelected.
Well, that's right.
Well,
Chavez and Castro.
Actually, people in America are making those bets too.
Well, you know, I tell you, Steve, the most disgusting part of the way some of the president's people have looked at this very issue is apparently if you're a white person and you voted for Obama in 2008, you were an enlightened individual. But now, after 4 years of his record, if you've decided he doesn't deserve re-election, you're a racist.
Yeah. Go ahead,
so
Franklin.
In 4 years,
Franklin's got his mouth.
That's his people saying that.
Who brought that up this week? It was a white Republican who brought it up.
Actually, it was some of his. It was Colin Powell's former chief of staff who went on the radio.
A Republican.
He's
a Republican.
Franklin, we've got some pretty broad definitions of Republican, but right now, my personal opinion is Colin Powell and his chief of staff don't meet the definition.
But you loved him when he was on your team.
I was happy when he said he was a Republican, but he hadn't acted like one in the last 4 years.
Only because he disagreed.
But Franklin, here's the point. The man said that if you weren't voting for Obama this time, you were racist.
No,
so that begs the question. If you were a white person in 2008 and you voted for him, are you saying that they have now all of a sudden become racist?
First of all, John, wait a minute. First of all, you said that it was the Obama campaign who said it. Well, that's not true. That person is not a member of the Obama campaign. Second of all,
Obama has come out and condemned it.
Second of all, he didn't say if you're a white person and you vote against the president, you're a racist, and you know that's not what he said.
He said that what he said was in the Republican Party not voting for him are racist.
He said no, he didn't. He said there were a lot of racist elements in the Republican Party. That's what he said. Now, I'm not saying pro or con, but don't misquote the man. Don't say he's got a job that he doesn't have. Just let the facts speak for itself instead of trying to slant them.
You know, I had someone come up to me the other day and make a comment to me, and I thought about it a little bit. It talked about, you know, if you voted for Obama the first time, you know, that really was a sign that you weren't prejudiced. You know, you weren't prejudiced. But they said if you vote for Obama this time, it's just a sign you're crazy.
Well, here's my question, Steve. Mia Love is a black conservative woman running in Utah. She's been called House, I don't even want to say it, what she's been called. Does that mean, Franklin, that all the Democrats in Utah that are voting against Mia Love are voting out of racist reasons? Does it mean that all the white liberals down in Florida that are working against Alan West are racist because they don't vote for the black man?
Who said they were?
The Obama campaign, through their surrogates, has introduced the idea that there's racism involved in not supporting him.
Wait a minute, John. This all started because a white Republican spouted his mouth off and said that the only reason Colin Powell endorsed him was because he was black. That's how this discussion got started. It wasn't the Obama campaign. It was
So
somebody who was a national co-chair for the Romney campaign.
You mean like Eva Longoria, national co-chair for Obama, who said that any woman or a minority that voted for Romney was ignorant and unintelligent? That person? A national co-chair. Matter of fact, Alan Combs, a respected ultra-liberal, said Eva Longoria should either resign from the Obama campaign or be fired.
The last time I checked, women were multiracial.
She said women and minorities. She said any woman or minority that voted for Romney was ignorant and unintelligent.
Okay.
And she's called, look at what happened to the little girl from the movie Clueless when she came out and said she supported Romney. She got called a house Negro. She got called all kinds of things.
And that's totally inappropriate.
Matter of fact, there's a black Marine Republican running against Elliston, the only Muslim member of Congress up in I believe Michigan, and he's now been called a house Negro by Elliston's people. He's been called all kinds of racist names. He's a hero to our country, and simply because he's running against a Democrat, they called him all kinds of names, but yet the New York Times hasn't condemned that. No one's called that racist. The fact is, if you're a black and you're a Republican, you can be called any name in the book. Matter of fact, I guess based on this, all of the Democrats in Pennsylvania that didn't vote for Lynn Swann in 2006, a black Republican, all of them must have been motivated by race. The point is the Obama campaign is desperate, and they've now interjected race into this to cover whatever failings they have.
They're desperate. They're winning.
Well, I don't
Why
know.
would they? Who's desperate? I would say
Not
that
according
maybe
to the polls.
Yeah, according to the polls, John, and you know it.
No, I don't, Franklin.
No,
actually,
really.
Romney's ahead
Gallup
right now.
has Romney ahead over 50% the last 2 weeks in a row. The president hasn't been over 50% ever, and no president's being reelected without being over 50%.
The bottom line is, in all of those so-called swing states.
You mean like Iowa, where the Democrat paper, the Des Moines Register, endorsed Romney, the first Republican in 42 years?
Fortunately, newspapers don't get to vote, and so.
Well, I'm sure the Obama campaign didn't want the largest newspaper in Iowa to endorse.
If newspapers don't get to vote, they sure are trying to sway the election one
Now,
way.
guys, keep in mind the Des Moines Register that hasn't endorsed Republican in 42 years, which means they endorse Jimmy Carter and Walter Mondale over Ronald Reagan. But this time, they've decided to endorse Mitt Romney.
That is a big hit.
Fine, it's a big hit. But the facts are that the polls show that they're virtually tied in Florida again. That's what the polls show.
That's the CNN poll.
Actually,
No, it was the average of 3 polls.
All of them left sided.
The polls show Romney ahead 4 to 5 points in Ohio now. They show Virginia back with Obama ahead.
Hey, what is so? They keep talking about the race comes right down to Ohio. Comes right down to Ohio. I've had a caller ask me this week. What is it about Ohio? I mean, Ohio is important. What is it? 13 electoral votes or something. But they just talk about you got to win Ohio to win the election. Well, I mean, why do they keep saying that?
No Republican has been elected president without winning Ohio.
But why?
Well, it's got to do with the path that the different candidates have to go through in order to win. In other words, there's a number of states that the candidates have to put together in order to get to where they need to be. And in Governor Romney's case, okay, without him winning that state, he has to pretty much run the table in the other swing states.
In other words, like California's got how many electoral?
50-something.
Yeah,
50-something. So basically, California is going to go.
It hadn't gone for a Republican, and I don't think Reagan even carried it.
No, Reagan carried it one time.
Right. So basically, what they're trying to say, I think,
it's because Ohio has been known to be a swing state. It has gone both ways, so it's been in play. A lot of these other states are not in play. They're either Republican or the Democrat. Sure. Interesting thing, though, is this summer the Obama campaign was saying that, Romney couldn't win without Florida, and he couldn't win without Virginia. Well, now they're really back to a firewall of Ohio.
Well, actually, in truth, it's just true. I mean, Governor Romney pretty much does have to win Florida and Ohio. if he doesn't win those 2 states.
No, actually, he can win Florida and Virginia. He can pick up New Hampshire and Iowa and Colorado, and he doesn't have to have Ohio.
The point is, he's pretty much got to run the table of other states in order to get there.
Which it's looking like he's doing.
Well, not according to the polls, John.
Well, frankly, you're wrong about the polls.
You really got to get off Fox News some days.
Well, I'm not on Fox News. I'm on Gallup. Gallup now says that according to their exit polling of people who have actually voted, Romney is actually leading by 15 percentage points.
So far.
In the early voting.
So far this year.
Now, the early voting was the president's supposed to be a strong point.
So far this year, the Gallup poll has been, when Obama was ahead and when they say Romney's ahead, has been far greater margins than any of the other polls. So it's been treated as what I would call an outlier.
Well, one of the problems is that David Axelrod, the president's campaign manager, actually called Gallup in the spring and threatened them for not changing the way they do their polling.
Here's what I know. Before the first debate, Gallup's the one that said.
Then let's talk about Rasmussen. Rasmussen has Romney up as well.
Quinnipiac's not saying that.
Matter of fact, you've got a Democratic polling company that actually pulled out of Florida, North Carolina, and Virginia. It's a Democrat polling company that said they're done. They're going to Romney. There's no reason to even be there anymore.
All right, we're going to take a break. Happy Halloween, everyone. We'll be back in just a minute.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee.